Reports indicate that the Israeli military has said, "We will choose when to prove our precise and surprising attack capabilities." That seems to be in response to questions about how they will respond to this attack. What's your take on that statement? What does that mean? We will choose when to prove our precise and surprising attack capabilities.
We have to look back at how Israel responded to April's attacks. What they did, they launched an attack from Iraqi airspace onto an Isfahan-based, which is in central Iran, and they targeted the anti-aircraft defense system. So perhaps building off of that, Israel's rhetoric has now escalated from last time, and they said if Iran were to launch another ballistic missile attack, our response would be more firm. Now, in this context, that depends on how far Israel wants to take things, or whether Israel necessarily perceived this as an escalation, or whether this would be an opportunity for Israel to target two main military infrastructures inside Iran. One of them, of course, being the nuclear plant, whether it's in Natanz, or as well as the S-400s that would be defending a lot of these sites, and other launch capabilities located perhaps in Kermanshah or other provinces inside Iran. Many analysts were claiming that Iran should not fall in the quote-unquote trap set by Israel by attacking and by responding to Israel's targeting of Iranian assets in the region. Now Israel has perhaps a green light to defend itself and to follow up with the threat it has made. So now it is an opportunity for Israel to follow up with the critical infrastructures inside Iran that pose an existential threat to Israel, the same way that Israel carried out about 1,500 strikes in southern Lebanon, probably mostly precision-guided missiles, as well as taking out key commanders. Whether the same scale of attack that we saw in Lebanon is going to occur in Iran, it seems a bit unlikely, but now the opportunity has presented itself to Israel.
What is your estimation or hypothesis as to how today's attack perhaps threatens a wider conflict? What is the likelihood we see a full-scale war in the region as a result of what happened today?
Depends on how Iran wants to leverage the ongoing escalation. Many were claiming that Iran has been showing quote-unquote restraint in the recent rounds of escalation in Lebanon prior to today's attack to perhaps get more concessions or to get perhaps a better deal in case there were to be ongoing nuclear negotiations, which currently they're halted. So depending on how Tehran views this strategy, they can go one or two ways. One way for them to be perhaps use this as leverage, which now they have given up by attacking Israel. So at this point, the ball is in Israel's court, and that would probably mean that Israel's military capabilities have so far extended beyond Iran borders, and they've targeted assets inside Iran, and this has given them an opportunity to follow up with that. Now, if there were to be an Israeli strike on Iranian critical nuclear infrastructure and launch ballistic missile launch capabilities, that poses a question as to how Iran would respond, or whether Iran would even have the capacity to respond, assuming that they have lost most of their leverage. In southern Lebanon, Hamas is practically non-existent at this point. And if Israel were to strike Iranian territory and were to take out a lot of ballistic missiles, then at that point Tehran is left without any leverage. They would no longer pose a threat regionally if they were to have their nuclear program as well as all their missiles and perhaps drone manufacturing capabilities perhaps more than disrupted and destroyed.
Interesting. I want to pick up something you just said. You mentioned Hamas, and you said it's not as much of a threat as it has been. Can you talk about where things stand in Gaza and how today's events affect the ongoing conflict there?
When it comes to Gaza, my understanding is that perhaps 2 or 3 battalions still remain, while most of the military capabilities of Hamas has been more or less contained, to say the least. Many analysts also believe that part of the attack wave that targeted Lebanon when it came to the pager attacks and the radio attacks, that was because that was perhaps a bit premature, and Israel would have waited to finalize or perhaps reach a better situation in Gaza before they have opened a front up in their northern front. However, some say that information was foiled and was leaked, and Hezbollah was aware of the the pager attacks, which is what led Israel to perhaps quote unquote prematurely launch a new wave into Lebanon, which effectively escalated to where we are right now. I think in an ideal world, perhaps Israel would not have wanted to fight two wars on its two fronts. That said, the situation in Gaza is significantly more contained than it is in Lebanon. Hamas's capabilities are very, very, very reduced. Currently, the only person standing that is perhaps the more of a strategic thinker within the Hamas's system would be Yahya Sinwar, and his days are effectively numbered as well. It's very likely for Israel to take him out similarly when the way they took out Hassan Nasrallah. So when it comes to Gaza, I think Israel feels more secure with its position as opposed to Lebanon, which we have an ongoing ground invasion as we speak.